Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dana Samuel, UNPOG, UN DESA. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome you all to this regional symposium on strengthening the capacities of public institutions and developing effective partnership to realize the 2030 agenda. We are now ready to begin the proceedings of the symposium. Please kindly take note of the following announcements for this afternoon. Today's afternoon session is divided into two sections. Specifically, we have the plenary session 1, taking stock of the implementation of the SDGs 16 on effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions in Asia and the Pacific, lessons learned, and good practices. The plenary session 2A will be on effective public institutions and digital government for advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. There will be a 30-minute coffee break between 3:30 to 4 o'clock. We have the free Wi-Fi service here, and it's available, and the notice is posted on the wall. You can kindly take note of that. For your information, for places of convenience, that's the restroom, please kindly be informed that you can access the restrooms located in the hallways from the 4th floor to the 8th floor, basically for this symposium. The emergency exits are all accessible for the purposes of this symposium. Please, if you need any help, kindly contact any of our staff who will be happy to help you or assist you. We have a welcome dinner at close of day, which will be at 7 p.m. And the details will be provided to us shortly before we end the session. For your information, timekeeping is of essence to this symposium, and I would like to advise that all speakers and presenters to please keep their presentations within the allocated time, and your kind cooperation is highly anticipated in this regard. For this symposium too, we have opened a discussion board on our webpage, and since morning, there have been the distribution of IDs and passwords, and it's currently being done. And you can easily find your ID and password at the back of your name card. What we want you to do is that you are supposed to sign in to the newly launched webpage, especially for this symposium, to make it more interactive. That's what we want you to do, please. And what will happen is that if you encounter any challenges or difficulty, kindly contact our colleague EJ, or Iwi Jong, whose contact or email address is on the webpage. We also have the partnership corner. When you enter this hall, on your right side, just immediately after entering this hall, we have a neatly designed table, a flip chart table, or a notice board, where participants are kindly invited to write their notes and stick on board what their capacity support needs are, what you are able to offer, and the follow-up commitments you want to make after the symposium. But we are kindly advising you to do that whilst the session is continuing. We also, for this particular session today, we have an interactive session. There will be an interactive session right after the last presenter for the first session. This will take the form of a roundtable discussion. The guiding questions to be addressed during this roundtable discussion that are in the booklets also will be projected on the screen as well as for your quick reference. So please kindly take note of that. At the end of the discussion, we will invite representatives or reps from some tables to share their main discussion points. So please designate one group reporter who will share the brief summary of your group discussion. Each table is supposed to provide is going to be provided with a flip chart, piece of paper, and markers to summarize their best practices, recommendations, and action lines. We ask each group to summarize the key messages and policy recommendation on the notes for group discussion, which is on each table. That will be done when the group is about to start. We will collect the notes for the rapporteur's summary and report back to the plenary session 4 on day 3. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I would like to take this opportunity to now introduce our moderator for this session. For your information, please kindly permit me now to introduce our able moderator for this session. It is my great honor and privilege to introduce to you Mr. Chegun Chong, Head of UNPOG DPIDG, UN DESA. Shall we welcome him with a big round of applause?
Thank you, Dana. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chegun Chong, Head of UNPOG. Welcome to this regional symposium. I hope you have very much enjoyed your stay in Incheon, and also you have enjoyed the site visit this morning with the multicopter and drones. Although this first plenary session is not the official opening session, because UN Undersecretary General Ryu Jun-min and Korea Minister of Interior and Safety will deliver their official remarks tomorrow during the high-level session. I'd like to give you some general introduction about this symposium at this time. It is the second time that UN DESA's DPIDG UNPOG has organized a regional symposium, and it has become the flagship event of UNPOG. Today, we have around over 100 participants in this room from the Asia and the Pacific and Eastern Africa, including 34 foreign government officials currently enrolled as graduate students at Korea Development Institute School. And tomorrow, we'll have another 37 government officials from developing countries will join us. They are participating in the international training program of Korea Local Government Officials Development Institute, LOGOD. Actually, this morning, UNPOG just provided a half-day training session for these 37 LOGOD trainees with a focus on localizing SDGs. I'm very happy to witness that the number of participants has increased by a big margin compared with the first symposium in December last year. To a large extent, it manifests the increasing interest from government officials, civil society organizations, private sector, and academia in our symposium. I hope this symposium will become an even more important venue for all of us to have dialogue on emerging challenges and innovative solutions, share lessons, exchange good practices, and build partnerships for SDG implementation. We will do our best to ensure the program of this symposium could be set and designed better to reflect your policy concerns and challenges for seeking solutions to emerging challenges. We'll also follow up with our participants and partner institutions for feedback and suggestions to ensure that the symposium could be more policy relevant and help address challenges in the course of advancing 2030 agenda through exchange of good practices and partnership building. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to express my gratitude to Korea Ministry of the Interior and Safety and Incheon Metropolitan City Government for their strong support and our domestic resource persons. I also appreciate good cooperation with other international organizations such as UNESCO, UNDP Seoul Policy Center, UNDP Astana Civil Service Hub, UNDP Kabul, UNISDR, UNITAR Sifal Jeju, AFDB, Green Climate Fund, World Economic Forum, Internet Society, Indian Ocean Commission, International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, SAP Africa, and other institutions. Special thanks go to my colleague, Ms. Adriana Alberti, Chief of Capacity Development of DPIDG, and her team for their strong support from the very beginning of preparing for this symposium. With this introduction of the symposium, I would now open the first plenary session on taking stock of implementation of SDG 16 on effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions in Asia and the Pacific. Before I move ahead, I'd like to introduce Ms. Katinka Weinberger from SCAP Regional Hub. She will be our rapporteur who will be responsible to summarize key policy recommendations and report back to the plenary session 4 during the partnership building session on day 3. Thank you, Katinka. We all recognize that public institutions have a critical role in implementing the SDGs through the policies they make and public service they deliver. And public institutions in many developing countries are not well equipped to address the SDG challenges, as Agenda 2030 requires an ambitious integrated framework with whole of government and whole of society approaches. The 2019 High-Level Political Forum will also review SDG 16, which specifically calls for effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. This session will present an overview of SDG implementation in the region, about challenges and constraints in governance capacities. It will also review the regional consultation process of SDG implementation under the auspices of UN SCAP, with a focus on dimension of public administration. This session will also share lessons and exchange of good practices in preparing the voluntary national review to the HLPF. This session will include 5 thematic presentations and an interactive session for group discussions. I hope this session could offer a good chance for sharing lessons and good practices in setting up institutional arrangement for SDG implementation. Now, let me have the pleasure to invite Ms. Adriana Alberti, Chief of Capacity Development Unit of DPIDG, to deliver an umbrella presentation on public institutions and their cross-cutting roles in SDG implementation. Adriana? Yeah.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to join my colleague, Mr. Chae-Gun Chung, the head of UNPOG, in welcoming you to the regional symposium. And I also would like to thank Mr. Chung for all the great preparation and work in organizing this very good and important, I think, regional symposium. Let me also thank the hosts of this symposium and in particular, the Ministry of Interior and Safety, as well as the Metropolitan City of Incheon, for their very generous contribution and support to the regional symposium. My presentation is about a global perspective of SDG 16 in particular. I would like to start by saying that, as you all know, governance and public administration are key drivers to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the key features of the 2030 Agenda is that there is now a dedicated goal on strong institutions, peace and justice, which is extremely important because, as we know, with the Millennium Development Goals, there was no such goal that would look at the role of institutions and governance. And particularly, we know that Goal 16 commits to promoting effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions. And why are these important? Because we know that the vision that a whole nation has and the vision of its people is encapsulated in institutions and then translated into programs of action. We also know that from experience, if we do not have strong institutions, the 2030 Agenda and its 17 goals will not likely be realized. Effective institutions are very important to ensure that the quality of services is delivered to the people, including education, water, justice. We know that the whole gamut of services is extremely important. Therefore, we need effective institutions to deliver these services. Inclusive institutions, and this goes to one of the main principles of the 2030 Agenda, which is leaving no one behind, is that there is a realization that the 2030 Agenda will not be achieved unless it is realized together with the people through partnerships and through participation of citizens in decision-making processes. And accountable institutions, we know that is also a pillar. Why? Because we need to strengthen integrity and we need to ensure that corruption is curbed, since we know that corruption diverts resources from the SDGs. So if we had to show the path towards SDGs, it would be this way, and corruption would take us that way. Therefore, having accountable institutions is extremely important. Now, what we did in UN DESA, we have analyzed the reports, particularly the voluntary national reviews of the various countries that have presented so far at the high-level political forum. And we produced a compendium on institutional arrangements for for the SDGs. And what we have realized by compiling the various institutional arrangements that exist is that in reality, and this is no surprise, there is no one single model because countries start from different positions, different contexts, and of course we also know that the national space is extremely important, so each country adapts the SDGs to their national and local level as they see most fit. But what we have seen is that there are some trends and some commonalities. So in some countries, there has been the creation of new institutional arrangements. For example, the Sustainable Development Commission in Germany, or interministerial committees which bring together different ministries. For example, Bangladesh, Japan, Nepal, and Pakistan created new cross-sectoral commissions or committees. There is also a second case where new mandates were given to existing institutions. So this is the case, for example, of the Gross National Happiness Commission in Bhutan, or the National Institution for Transforming India, IONG in India. In all of these cases, we have also seen that there is the establishment of entities within the office of the head of state or government, and usually this provides it encourages much more, let's say, it leads to implementation. And so this is one of our conclusions. Sorry, she just showed me 5 minutes and I'm only at my second slide. So, and then in other countries, we know that there is, for example, one ministry that is in charge, and that could be, for example, the Ministry of Environment or the Ministry of Finance. So again, we see an array of different institutional arrangements that have been set in place in different countries across the world. But what are some of the key elements for implementation? First of all, that leadership at the highest level is very important to ensure acceleration and realization of the SDGs. Also, understanding of existing institutional architecture and how the various institutions are being engaged around the various SDGs and the targets, but as well, how are they working together? So integration and coordination of all parts of government, not only horizontally, but also between national government, local government, are extremely important, and therefore we talk about a horizontal and vertical integration. And I would like to take the opportunity to mention that our division and UN DESA has recently published a World Public Sector report on working together and specifically addressing issues of vertical and horizontal integration, and also looking at specific sectors, so it's quite interesting. Another lesson learned is that many times SDGs have remained at the national level, but they have not involved so much the local level and local authorities, and we know that the SDGs will fail if, in a way, the local level authorities are not fully involved, because public servants at the local level are the ones at the front line delivering services, and therefore involving through participatory mechanisms local level authorities is very important. There's also been discrepancy in the way that parliaments have been involved, and it's extremely important as well to involve them for budgeting of the SDGs and, of course, for the legislation. And public servants should be involved because public servants play a key role in the implementation of the SDGs. Another important point that we have seen is that we should not consider sustainable development as yet another policy that has to be added on. But actually the real challenge is how do we now mainstream sustainable development through strategies, policies, and plans, and as the foundation of our governance frameworks. Lessons learned from various countries around the world is that there is an increasing awareness of the 2030 Agenda's commitments, but it is not at all levels and in all sectors. We have noticed that in some countries there might be awareness among civil society, but this is not always the case. So we think that even though we are now in the third year of implementation of the 2030 Agenda, but we believe that more awareness raising and advocacy are needed, and we had a very interesting discussion this morning in our meeting of the Schools of Public Administration, where it was highlighted that increasing awareness through public communication, media campaigns is very important to get everybody involved, because the SDGs will not be reached unless every single person is involved in them, in their realization. However, there is less understanding of how to implement the goals. The goals are, as you know, 17, intricate, and interconnectedness between the goals. Integration is one of the main challenges. Of course, public administration has been tackling with many of the issues that are present in the 2030 Agenda, but what is really new in the 2030 Agenda is the nature of the interconnectedness between the goals, which calls for whole of government and, of course, whole of society, the principle of leaving no one behind, and the principle of transformation. So we're not talking about small improvements, but really transforming completely public administration and governance institutions. So we know that individual and institutional capacities become a fundamental element to implement the SDGs, and we need to understand how institutions change so that we don't embark only on changing the formal structure of institutions, but we go deeper. And my time is over, so I will just leave you then with this, and perhaps if I can have one more minute. And we discussed this as well in our meeting this morning, but a lot of attention has been placed on changing the institutional structures and arrangements. And but if you see this picture, really that is just the tip of the iceberg, because institutions are actually made of formal rules, but they are also made up of underlying values and belief systems. So unless we are able to also change those beliefs and underlying values through changing mindsets, then whatever new institution will be put in place, it will not be effective. And we have seen around the world, new institutions or new institutional arrangements, but what happens is that then the mindset of those who have to participate is not changed, and therefore the institution remains only on paper, but it does not really provide for the function that it was created for. And also institutional arrangements need to respond to a specific problem to be legitimate. So that's also something very important. And they have to be context specific. They have to take into account what is the organizational culture, what is the institutional context, so that it is not just complying with the 2030 agenda, but really advancing the 2030 agenda. And because the 2030 agenda, as I said, is so intricate, especially in what concerns the elements of policy integration, but also integrating various levels of governance, it's very important to have a holistic understanding and view where you start from a context or a situation analysis. That's why I say that the context is extremely important. And then looking towards a future visioning. And so what does the public sector want to achieve within, of course, the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, but there must be a commitment to a nationally owned long-term vision. And that's another challenge because usually policies are short-term, but now how do we anchor them into institutional arrangements or practices so that they are long-term? And if we want to have a vision for a holistic framework, we also need to have a new national governance framework and a roadmap for sustainable development where the various elements are looked at together. Because if we are talking about innovation in let's say, organizational innovation and institutional innovation, we cannot disjoint that from transformational leadership, from building capacities of public officials. At the same time, if we look at process innovation in terms of service delivery, how can we make services more readily available? How can we include vulnerable groups? How can we ensure that nobody is left behind? Again, that goes back also to building those competencies that public servants must have, including emotional intelligence, including competencies to empathize with what, vulnerable groups. And again, we had a very interesting discussion. Likewise, if we look at the mechanisms for citizen engagement and service delivery, we also need to think about including vulnerable groups, the furthest left behind, but we also need to think about data, disaggregated data. Where are those vulnerable groups? And so we need to also build the statistical capacities of the national statistical offices, and of course engaging parliaments. And we cannot forget about public-private partnerships and social innovation. And I think that this is one of the crucial points, is really partnership. Of course, we have Goal 17, but I think much more can be done towards this end of bringing together the private sector and government and civil society to find innovative solutions. And of course, leveraging the potential of ICTs and novel frontier technologies. You will be hearing about artificial intelligence over the next days, but then we also need to think, how do we make sure that we don't create more digital divide? So what are we going to do to bridge the current digital divide, but also to ensure that no one is left behind, so that there are not 2 or 3 tiers in adopting these technologies. So I think I will need to conclude, but what I would like to say is that making governance institutions stronger is indispensable, and if I may quote the 2030 Agenda, for people, planet, and prosperity. I think that we need to work together, we need to collaborate, and this event is extremely important because nobody has the solutions, we don't have the solutions, but I think that collectively, by engaging in dialogue, peer-to-peer learning, by coming together, exchanging our own experiences, I think that this is a step forward in the realization of the 2030 Agenda, and I thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Adriana. Very qualitative presentation. So I'd like to, it would be better to save my talking. So we can get only one question about Adriana's presentation. Okay, yes. Yeah, we can hear. Yeah.
I'm Sonal Goyal. I work in the government sector. I represent India. So my question is with respect to the local institutions. What do you think that needs to be done at the local institutions, specifically maybe the urban as well as the rural setup? Because in our country, we have the Panchayati Raj institutions as well as the urban local bodies. So when we talk about the SDGs, so it is not only at the ministerial level, it needs to be taken down as well as to the field. So what should be done at the local institutional level as per your experience? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we have also looked at the various modalities and mechanisms, through the voluntary national review. So we collected that information to see what are countries doing and what mechanisms are they putting in place to engage the local level. So there are different modalities, but for example, there are some countries, like I believe Finland, that also includes local level authorities into the discussions at the national level. So some countries have also put in place, I think, I don't remember exactly the various countries because I don't want to, I don't have now the names of the countries, but other countries have, for example, organized national social dialogues and also local dialogues where they bring together through participatory mechanisms the various local authorities to discuss in participatory workshops. And also we have a committee of experts on public administration, and they have also thought a lot about how can we bring about a local 2030 agenda? How do we localize the principles at the local level? But certainly, I think that there are two different mechanisms. One is ideally having the local authorities already integrated into whatever institutional arrangement there is at the national level, but that not always happens. But that would be, some countries are already doing that. And then second would be also to organize at the local level through participation also of civil society and other actors, discussions around the 2030 agenda to raise awareness and also to build capacities, because I believe that building capacities at all levels is very important, but not just among governments. It's very important also to raise the awareness and build the capacities of civil society and bring in the private sector. But if you're interested to know more in detail about what other countries have done, I'll be very happy to share with you those concrete examples that we have collected.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. UNPOG nowadays researching about localizing SDGs with UNDP and Korean government. And also, we are very much focusing on localizing SDGs for advancing 2030 agenda. So we share our performance and result. Okay. Okay, thank you, Adriana. Let's continue with Ms. Katinka Weinberger from ESCAP, Chief Environment and Development Policy Section, Environment and Development Division, UN ESCAP, to present on regional progress of SDG implementation, challenges and constraints in governance capacities. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Thank you very much to colleagues in UNPOG, especially Mr. Chong and his team, for inviting ESCAP to speak in this very important symposium today, and to share our thoughts on the regional progress of SDG implementation, challenges and constraints in governance capacities. Let me begin by sharing a brief outlook on the progress that has been made in respect to SDG implementation here in Asia and the Pacific. And this is based on some work that colleagues in our statistics division do on an annual basis, where they look at progress made in respect to 16 of the SDGs and highlight where progress has been sufficient and where it has not been sufficient. The line in the middle shows 2017. So if progress were to be sufficient, we would expect the bar to have passed that line. And you see that this is the case for only one of the SDGs, for quality education. A couple of other SDGs, especially in the social domain, do pretty well, especially if we look at SDG 1 on poverty and SDG 3 on health and well-being. But you can also see from this slide that there is a lack of progress in many important areas. Overall, progress on goals related to environmental stewardship have been very poor. There has been very little progress. And given the focus of this particular symposium, I would like to point out especially two areas of real concern to us. These are SDG 10 on reduced inequalities, where we actually see regression happening in the region. And this is SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. So very clearly, the symposium is right on spot. Our colleagues went a little bit further and also looked at the expected distance from targets by 2030. The slide is a little bit unwieldy, but I would like to draw your attention to the top level, goal 16, which shows the urgent need to accelerate progress. However, I'm showing you this slide because it also shows another important aspect of looking at the progress on goal in respect to this goal. We only see two indicators up there, and this is another major concern that we have with this goal, that there is very little data available, very little statistics available to appropriately measure progress made on this goal. So this is an area that requires urgent attention. Now, ESCAP has an active role in supporting follow-up and review at regional level. And one of the things that we do is, on an annual basis, we organize an Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development that allows member states to come together and to discuss progress made, share best practices, lessons learned. We also organize these consultations at sub-regional level to really build a good understanding of where progress is happening, where more attention needs to be drawn to. And as an outcome of these various fora that we organize, let me share with you some of the areas we see where governments continue to face challenges and constraints, especially in governance capacities in our region, in Asia and the Pacific. While countries are increasingly recognizing the need to break out of institutional and policy silos to fully realize the benefits of the 2030 Agenda and to address the trade-offs that also exist between different SDGs, they frequently lack the capacity to implement efforts, mechanisms, and tools to enhance policy coherence. That's the first bullet up there. The second bullet relates to the challenges in the capacity of the public sector, especially in terms of scope, importance, and urgency to turn the political vision of the 2030 Agenda into a reality at local level. And that's where we see the second area that really requires attention. The third area is related to the effective follow-up and review framework, which is crucial to ensure that the international community is on track to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the tools that are being applied for this are the voluntary national reviews. We're going into the fourth year of the voluntary national reviews, and we see that good progress is being made. But one of the areas that, that requires more attention is how to ensure broad engagement of civil society and the people per se, so that this is really an inclusive process. The fourth area are related to strengthening inclusion and ensuring no one is left behind, one of the paradigms of the 2030 Agenda, and relates to ensuring or to protecting and institutionalizing human rights and access to justice, ensuring participation in all aspects of the implementation and voice for communities, for groups. It relates to the institutional and social cultural norms and practices, and it relates to access to critical resources such as education, infrastructure, services, and so on. The 2030 Agenda embeds social accountability throughout. The implementation of the 2030 Agenda clearly relies on civic participation and calls for social accountability exercised by multiple civil society organizations at national, at regional, and at global levels, which are all essential components of the follow-up and review process. This has both developmental and protective impacts. In respect to protection, it places specific emphasis on marginalized and vulnerable groups. And on development, the agenda speaks to the allocation and use of resources. It speaks to service delivery, ensuring a more equitable outcomes. It speaks to transparency and trust building. And it speaks to evidence-based policy and decision-making, as well as to balancing private interests and public goods. There are a couple of mechanisms and supportive tools that all contribute towards social accountability, focusing on processes that both enable personal empowerment, collective identity building, and knowledge and right, and support the interest in and the capabilities for political engagement. I won't go through them in detail, but would just like to draw your attention to the right side, which focuses on the importance of institutionalizing stakeholder and community engagement and public participation. And there are a couple of means available to achieve that. So what is it that we observe? We have seen a clear recognition of the need to engage more meaningfully and to live up to the commitments that the 2030 Agenda spells out. We do see that the voluntary national review reports, they galvanize action and engagement, and they can lay the foundation for future steps. As Adriana had also pointed out in her presentation, we see varieties of multi-stakeholder bodies for coordination and technical support to the VNRs, but we also see that there is still room for improvement, for meaningful partnership and engagement, for capacity gaps, addressing resources. Institutionalization especially is extremely critical, but often forgotten. Institutional engagement meaning the critical and foundational challenge for strengthening governance. And let me just go through these quickly because I saw I only have 1 minute left, which requires organizational and political leadership, support and commitment to engage meaningfully, requires specific mechanisms and channels for communication with stakeholders, the need to allocate institutional responsibility and resources, and the need also for staff in different institutions to share common understanding on guidelines on how to engage with different stakeholders, who these stakeholders should be, and the standards of the quality of engagement. Let me then just very quickly talk a little bit about the ESCAP support that ESCAP provides on stakeholder engagement. We have worked on developing planning and assessment tools, building training materials and supporting facilitators who are oriented towards the 2030 Agenda. We have done professional development workshops on stakeholder engagement, which is tailored to the 2030 agenda but can be used beyond. And we've also provided technical assistance to voluntary national review report countries with a focus especially on how to engage stakeholders in that process and how to achieve policy coherence throughout the VNRs. Very quickly, I'm nearly there. The planning and assessment tool has 4 dimensions of quality engagement. It looks at indicators in the context of purposeful engagement, in the context of inclusive engagement, in the context of transformative engagement, and proactive engagement. And it can be used by organizations either to identify gaps, to agree on what quality of engagement means for them, and to plan engagement processes throughout, whereas stakeholders can use it to articulate to governments what they expect to see in the process of being engaged and to plan and assess their own engagement processes. So this is my final slide, just to share with you that what I would like you to remember from this presentation is the institutionalization of engagement is foundational for strengthening governance. It's not only about engagement throughout the VNR, but what comes beyond. It requires specific mechanisms and tools, and it requires leadership, commitment, and is supported by an agreement on standards regarding the quality of engagement. This is my last slide. I would like to point you to our SDG help desk, where much of this information is available, where you can also find the tool that ESCAP has developed in this respect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katinka. Now I open the floor for only one question. Do you have any? One question. Okay.
Mustafa Ahmed, KD High School. I wanted to ask, how can we deal with failure states, the organization and public institutions in failure states, like states who fail, like some war, like some conflicts? How can we deal and manage this goal in failure states? Thank you.
I think that is actually a very big question, and I would like to, I guess I understand we still have time afterwards in the roundtables. I think that's a really good question to address within multiple people. So if I may, I would like to pass that here.
Okay. We have 3 days, three days, and also we have some interactive section tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So we keep the time right now. Okay, thank you, Katinka. Okay. Okay, now next presenters is Mr. Kanya Kamunkun, Deputy Director General of International Organization Department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lao PDR, to introduce the 2018 VNR preparatory process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the government of the Republic of Korea, especially Ministry of Interior and Safety and UN DESA, for the warm hospitality and made my participation possible. I'm particularly delighted to participate in this very important symposium to share with you some experience of the Lao PDR on the SDG localizations and the Voluntary National Review, or VNR, which was presented during the high-level political forums on sustainable development in New York recently in this year. Without further ado, allow me to start by highlighting the SDG localizations in the Lao PDR, which had been gone through the interlinked elements starting from the political view and commitment, planning, implementations, monitoring and reporting, and of course stakeholder engagement and communications element, which runs right across the element that I just mentioned. Right from the beginning, the Lao government had acknowledged that the political view is instrumental to achieve the SDG. That is why the government had established the National SDG Steering Committee under the leadership of the Prime Minister, with the member of the committee drawn from all ministry and ministry equivalent agency and mass organization, which is in turn the National SDG Secretariat and the SDG focal point across the relevant ministry to take ownership of each specific goal and indicator has been set up. The first round of localized indicator on SDG has also been integrated into our current 5-year National Socio-Economic Development Plan, or in SEDP 2016-2020, with 92 indicators out of 247 nationally agreed indicators has been localized and integrated into the plan. These 92 indicators form about 60% of the total 160 indicators of our current NSEDP. The 8th 5-year NSEDP also align the development strategy according to the 3 important pillars: economic, social, and environment, and the cross-cutting pillar that apply across all the SDG. On planning, we have implemented 5 key activities to help further ensuring that proper planning is in place to integrate SDG into the Lao national context. Since the adaptation of the SDG, we have drafted what we call the SDG roadmap toward 2030. This roadmap is a living document highlighting key various activities in different categories that the Laopedia will carry out to ensure the implementation, integration, and reporting of the SDG within the 15 years time frame. On integrated finance framework, we need to ensure that we identify different sources of finance to support the SDG achievement. The key message here is that it is not just about what kind of finance or how much money may be available, but how can we use it more effectively to achieve development results. On SDG indicator localizations, capacity building, and tracking system, we re-emphasize that standardization of the national indicator and data collections to ensure proper assessment of the result and outcome are crucial. On implementation, in addition to the institutional arrangement for SDG localization, we have been working with ministry concerned to ensure proper understanding on SDG reporting, or the SDGR, and SDG indicator implementation, SDGI. We task key ministries to look after certain SDG on reporting and coordinating purposes. For each SDG indicators, we have also tasked relevant ministry agencies to ensure the implementation and reporting as well. The 4th element is the monitoring and reporting, which is a crucial purpose to ensure that the SDG implementation is progressing on the right track. And this is to be implemented on the consistent and sustainable basis so that challenges can be addressed and overcome in the real-time fashions. High-quality disaggregated data is essential to ensure equitable progress against goal and target. We will need to identify and respond to most urgent data gap. Our focus has always been on the strengthening of countries' statistical system, which is undergoing now. On the stakeholder engagement and communication plan, we have developed a concept note on this basis on global practice. We aim to have the stakeholder engagement and plan and communication strategy on SDG sometime by the end of this year or no later than early next year. Can you skip this? Can you skip this one? Yeah. We have taken a step further, introducing our localized SDG or national SDG 18, Life Safe from UXO, into the SDG cluster at the national level. As you may know that more than 500 bombing missions, over 2 million tons of the ordnance were dropped in my country day and night over the 9 years from 1964 to 1973. To date, about 80 million UXOs still remain unclear, affecting the livelihood of ordinary people, posing challenge to the development. Realizing the severity of the remaining UXO, we have taken a holistic approach to formalize SDG 18 and put it as one of our top development priority lists. Now let me turn to our experience on the VNR process. Can you go back to the previous one? We gather information to support the progress and challenge of each adopt SDG indicator in two-pronged approach, namely evidence-based and whole of society approach, in line with the principle of being inclusive, transparent, and participatory. In these two approaches, we started from with the advocacy and awareness raising to ensure that the stakeholders are aware of the requirements in the 2030 agenda, as the awareness of the 2030 agenda and SDG form the foundation of fruitful discussions and objective opinion. In this process, leveraging from what we have learned from the MDG, we have partnership and work closely with the UNCT and development partner to assist us in capacity building and conducting good quality stakeholder engagement to allow us to get most insightful and objective information based on the principle of leaving no one behind. In the process of preparing the VNR in the implementation of the SDG, so far we have learned 5 very important lessons. First, the view and commitment from the government is paramount importance to the implementation of the SDG. Secondly, localizing SDG early is very important. Thirdly, we have learned that retrieving data to support the indicator of the SDG can be very challenging, as the methodology and cycle of the data are not available. Sometimes the administrative data is vastly different from the central data. Hence, administrative data need to be harmonized and streamlined, strengthened, and in additional that the institutional and statistical capacity need to be enhanced. Fourthly, the collaboration and coordination across line ministry and between central and local level are key to SDG implementation to reach the most disadvantaged group. Lastly, funding is one of the key issues across the above-mentioned lesson learned. We need to continue to source for funding and allocate them effectively to the right development strategy and practice. In summary, the key challenge of preparation to VNR we can categorize into advocacy, awareness, capacity building, and funding. May I stop here, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kanya. And yes, in particular, the Lao PDR's the goals, 60% of goals are very much related to localizing SDGs. So, okay, thank you. And then we have another presenters, Mr. Shurop Gulshen, Senior Planning Officer, Growth National Happiness Commission, Bhutan. Okay, thank you.
So happy afternoon to everyone. So I'll be presenting the good practices in terms of preparation of Vienna 2018 for Bhutan. So I think with regard to Bhutan, during the era of SDG, moment of pride has come to Bhutan in terms of graduation from LDC. So we are holding this dear in terms of, since Bhutan joined as a United Nations member in 1971, now it's been almost 47 years, and now maybe by 2023, Bhutan will be graduating from LDC, and it is a pride moment for Bhutan. I think this information is very important in the SDG era that Bhutan is graduating from LDC. So we have already qualified in terms of our criteria with regard to GNA per capita and human asset index. The only thing, the criteria that we could meet is with regard to EVI. So anyway, Bhutan will be graduating by 2023, and actually by 2023 is a transition period. I think that the present plan, which starts from the 2018 to 2023, we are already in a transition period in terms of graduation. So this is a good news for Bhutan. So in that way, we would like to thank United Nations and all the development partners for supporting Bhutan for over 50 years in a development journey. So we really want to thank all the partners in terms of Bhutan being supported well, and it has been a good, critical, important thing that Bhutan is graduating in the SDG era. So with regard to the SDG, institutional setup in case of Bhutan, so we have, I think we didn't create another separate separate SDG committee or commission like other countries, but we already have GNH commission at the national level for the development of planning and all the policy coordination in the country. So we have already the existing structure, but as presented in the earlier presentation, GNH commission has had an additional role in terms of SDG. So we have already GNH commission headed by Prime Minister. Then we have GNH Commission Secretariat, the Planning Commission, who coordinates the plan and policy in the country. So the other new thing that we have created is within the GNH Commission, GNH Secretariat is SDG Working Committee to oversee the Vienna report and the other exercises. Then we have this Vienna Task Force in terms of developing, coordinating, and in writing the report. Then we have this implementing agencies, all the agencies of the government who are actually involved in terms of providing the content to the Vienna report. Now, in terms of this institutional setup, so now we have this parliamentary oversight oversight on the SDG. I think our parliament had realized that they need to be engaged in terms of the SDGs. So in that sense, we have this good institutional setup in terms of SDG implementations in case of Bhutan. So in terms of integration of SDGs in the national planning framework, so our overall goal is always maximizing GNH. So our philosophy, our development plans and programs are always driven by GNH concept. So then within that sustainable development, SDG fits in with the concept of GNH and philosophy. So then we have this 12 5-year plan, which has already started since July 2018, and it will extend till 2023. So this is the integration at the national level. If you go to the specifics of this integration, I think this is very critical because we are talking about the institutions, capacity of institutions in terms of implementation. So we have this national vision of cross-national happiness maximization as an overarching goal and vision. Then we have plan objectives. Then we have these national results, 16 national key results for the plan, development plan. Then we have agency key results area at the agency key result areas at the central level. Then we have this key result area at the local level. So these two institutions are very important in terms of implementation. So then we have these programs and programs at this, I think at the agency level and at the local government level. So now, most important thing we have in this current plan is like principle of triple C. So coordination, consolidation and collaboration, which really talks about capacity. So in terms of coordinations, we don't have any coordination between the agencies, within the local government, the central government, even not talking each other. So there are lots of issues in terms of coordination. So that's why we are focusing on coordination. Consolidation, again, with the limited resources and capacity. So we are expanding so much infrastructure in the country. So rather than expanding, we need to consolidate now because of the constraint in terms of capacity and consolidation. Collaboration, we are not talking with the outside like CSOs. Government is not collaborating properly with the CSOs and other organization partners in the country. So that's why moving forward in the SDG era, this CCC, principle triple is very important because it really talks about the capacities of institutions and resources. So most important in terms of mapping, out of 169 target, we have already incorporated 134 out of 143, which is relevant to Bhutan. Then indicators as well, we have already integrated into the central agency as well as the local level, plans and programs. So that's why this framework is very important for Bhutan in terms of moving with implementation of SDGs. So next, so capital resource sharing in the current plan. So between central and local government is very critical because we have these institutions at the local government who are actually implementing the SDGs activities at the grassroots level. So that's why the share of resources becomes very important in terms of extending their capacity. 50-50 is the resource allocation we have between the central and local. Until last plan, we have only 30 to 70%. 30% resource shared to the local government, 70% is held by the center. So that's why empowering the local governments becomes, as an institutions, become very important in a decentralized setting. More financial resources, planning authority, management, efficiency, capacity, then more importantly, ownership and accountability in a sustainable manner moving forward. So in terms of accountability for implementation of SDGs, so we have this accountability in terms of government performance management system across all budgetary agencies of the government. So that's why local government, central government, whatever they implement on an annual basis, so we have this annual performance agreement system being signed with the Prime Minister, then is being reviewed on a half-yearly annual basis, then it goes to the Royal Civil Society Commission, where this moderation is done and all the agencies of the government are rated and then held accountable in terms of their performance. So that's why it's very critical that in the SDG era, this implementation, the accountability framework, the ownership is important in terms of these institutions. So finally, with regard to challenges, second slide, these are the challenges that we face: financial constraint, absence of financing needs, estimates for the SDGs, so inadequate human resources, both limited in terms of quantity and skills, then mismatch of skills, inadequate technology, affordability then as an issue in terms of technology, then weak coordination among stakeholders, then inadequate level of awareness and capacity in terms of aligning the local institutions plan with the SDG, then weak CSOs. So weak CSOs in a sense that in terms of human resources as well as financial resources, we have this the CSOs are just starting in the country. So weak data quality and data gap that we have in terms of then the statistical capacity. So weak M&E system, not really weak, but in terms of coordination is an issue. So in conclusion, I think to move forward to graduate Bhutan by 2023, I think we need continued support in terms of from our development partners, in terms of graduating, building capacity at all levels of institutions. Most probably our focus is at the local government. So that's why this capacity building in SDG in terms of local government with regard to their increased resources, with regard to their responsibility and ownership, we need more capacity building. So then we have to mobilize the resources to build these capacities and or others in terms of achieving the SDGs. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Shro. It is impressive that SDG Sustainable Development Goals have mainstreamed into the country's national plan, and those goals are closely linked to the local level. So you're emphasized on localizing SDGs, okay, and also the happiness perspective affected all the SDG implementation. Thank you very much. And next presenter is Mr. Davasren Avrimid, advisor on implementation of SDGs and Sustainable Development Vision, National Development Agency, Mongolia. You have 10 minutes. We are behind schedule, 20 minutes, so please keep the minutes. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I prepare a presentation give you information about experiences of SDGs implementation in Mongolia. In February 2016, Parliament Mongolia has approved STV 2040 by Resolution 20. This STV in Mongolia has four pillars and 44 objectives and 20 indicators: economy, society, governance, environment. Cabinet of Ministers in 2016 has adopted a resolution 249 regulation on formation of policy documents. What is dedicated ensure policy alignment of short and medium-term policy with STV 2040. This slide consists of two pillars: economical sustainable economic development, dedicated energy and infrastructure sector will be developed as leading sectors. Second, agriculture. First, agriculture. Second, food industry, construction. For copper, processing, coal, fuel, chemical. Leading processing plant for tourism, fire, mining, and interactive industries. Sustainable social development dedicated and poverty in all these forms, increase the share of middle income classes. First, inclusive growth and social equity for effective, high quality, accessible health care system. For knowledge based in society and skillful Mongolia. Governance for sustainable development, establish active participation in international cooperation. Environmental sustainability, dedicated to improve quality of people lives. We estimated coherence SDG Agenda 2040 with STV in Mongolia. 21% directly reflected, 24 and 3% content aligned, and 45% non-reflected Mongolia, 9 and 5% not relevant to Mongolia. How should Mongolia achieve to STB and STG goal and objectives? Develop a medium-term plan for implementation of STG and STB. Ensure alignment of long, medium, and short-term national, sectoral, and sub-national development policy. Set SDG indicators and targets at national level. Develop and strengthen National Institute framework for development planning and ensure its stability. Ensure alignment of priority objective with budget and financing. We may show of this slide development policy documents are very different and different in national, in sectoral, and local level. We use for review policy documents next guidelines. One step, prepare integrated guideline for review policy documents for alignment with SDG and STB. Step 2, test guideline for review policy and strategies and plans the water sector and identify target, improve the guideline based on experiences. For training, organize training on use of guideline and review policy document for public administration organization at national and local level. Four-step review, organization policy and for reviewing policy and all sector and set target and using integrated guideline. This let's show you organizational map. Mongolia, government Mongolia formed a national commission for implementation and coherence STV, STG. We have 18 working group who make estimate, compare with STV and STG. We dedicate next plan free phrases 2020, 25, 2040. Three pillars, document policy, mid-term plan, mid-term plan. We use methodology for estimate developed by Institute of Environment Sweden. Analysis policy variation with macroeconomic model. We use matrix for compare STV with STG. And in 9th October, we began discuss inclusive stakeholder that help us estimate coherence social economical policy documents. We hope have real result for formation voluntary national report in Mongolia. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Mr. Dabrosren, for sharing Mongolia's preparatory case for VNR to prepare next year. Thank you very much. Actually, this presentation material is pretty much good. So you can share our website, it'll be very helpful to prepare VNR. Okay, thank you. And now we have the interactive session. Before go ahead interactive section, I'd like to join me thanking once again our presenters. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. There is questions. Okay. This is the questions to be addressed during this roundtable discussion. We'll have 15 minutes for a roundtable discussion. So you don't have to take all the questions. Only one or two questions select. So after this discussion, we'll have share one or two representatives from tables what should discuss. So please designate the rapporteurs tables, and also you will fill out the template to give a rapporteur after discussions, and that result will be shared at the last day for our plenary discussion session. Okay, thank you. So take your time for discussion. 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay. Due to time limits, I have to close our discussion. Now, I hope that we'll have developed a good understanding what is the current progress of implementation of SDGs in the region. Before closing, I'd like to get the opportunity to share what you discussed. Only one or two tables. Anyone who share the discussions? Okay, give the microphone. Okay. Go. Okay. What's your name and where are you from?
Jeffrey Faitua from Samoa.
Samoa. Okay. Welcome. What's your name and where are you from?
I'm Jason from the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Congo. Republic of Congo. Okay. Now let's share what they discussed. Okay.
Thank you. We have discussed about the implementation of SDGs made by the Pakistani government. And the Pakistani government, we took the second question, what is the strategies, special initiatives and mechanisms have your governments taken or currently setting for advancing SDGs 16, especially on building effective, accountable, and inclusive public institutions? So the Pakistani government has 3 separate SDG units, each in Prime Minister office, the Parliament, and the Planning Commission. And also, they have settled the Planning and Development Department in each of the 4 provinces of the country. There is also the National Steering Committee for 27 secretaries of relevant SDGs ministries. And they also implement the annual development plan aligned SDGs in their projects. And the last one, the National Framework Policy on SDGs approved by the National Economic Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, another group from Bangladesh. We've met several times in a year. Okay, good to see you again. Good to see you again. Okay. Introduce yourself first.
Good afternoon. I am Shahriar Kader Siddiqui. I work in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Relations Division in Bangladesh. And he is my colleague.
This is Mustain Billah, Deputy Secretary, Special I Works Department of ICT, Ministry of ICT.
Okay. So we also choose the second one. What we have done so far in terms of building effective, accountable, and inclusive public institutions. So first of all, we have the government appointed principal coordinator under the Prime Minister's office. Then we have done a mapping for to give the specific responsibilities to the ministries, divisions, and even to the local governments. And we have appointed focal points to all of the departments so that we can monitor. And then we have set the national integrity system and policy. Then we have now taken the annual performance agreement for all our government staffs for monitoring their works and their performance. And we have developed strengthening of, we are trying to develop to strengthen the institutes. And we have taken specific capacity development programs for strengthening our officials and staffs in Bangladesh. And especially in the training institutes, all the training curriculum has been aligned and mainstreamed with the SDGs. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, due to the time limit, I should wrap up. Oh, you want this? No? You want? Okay, proactive engagement, I like that, which leads to make this symposium success. Okay. Introduce yourself first.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carlos Buitrago. I'm from Bolivia, and I'm with the KDI School of Public Policy and Management. I'm a student for a Master's in Development Policy. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what Bolivia is doing in terms of SDG 16. We started from the constitutional reform in 2006, which was focused on social inclusion and also gender empowerment. Bolivia is constituted of 36 sub-nations. So what the government did, it created a Ministry of Autonomy. So the focus is on empowerment of different indigenous communities, municipalities, different regions of the country. It's proven to be a complex process for Bolivia, but we're making very good progress in this area. Also, the importance of female participation in politics. We have a high rate of participation of women in Parliament and in the Senate, and I believe that in the next 10 years we will have a female president. So thank you very much. I will give the mic to my colleague.
My name is Abshir Yunus Musa. I am from Somalia, and I am a student at KDI School, and I'm doing a Master of Development Policy. And today I am presenting about Somalia. For Somalia, in order to make the country more stronger, especially in 16th goal, Somalia is carrying, because the previous government of Somalia, there was like a regime, and today Somalia's current government is going to work on including women to the politics, because previously the women were not represented at in the political sphere. And another thing is that the renewal of the constitution, because the constitution of Somalia was written again by a few elites, and it doesn't have clear support from the public, and the current government is also working to get a public support for that constitution, so that the constitution is represented, contributed by everybody. And another thing that Somalia is working on is to prepare a referendum for the whole for the constitution, as well as the public and electoral election for the whole country. And another thing is that rebuilding public institutions, because of the destruction of 2 decades in Somalia. Somalia is also going to rebuild the local governments and public institutions, so that the rural communities and youth, everybody will be represented, and their idea will be included in the political sphere. Thank you very much.
Thank you from Somalia and from Bolivia. So, you need? Okay. The last person, you are waiting for, okay. We have 2. Okay. 3? Okay, we will have the another interactive session the last day. We have much time. So actually, next session, the speakers are waiting for us. One of speakers, my academic advisor in my undergraduate student, actually prime minister level in Korea. So only you and you. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Our group also has chosen the second bullet, what strategies and special initiatives have the governments taken on setting or for advancing SDG 16. Although there were 4 participants from different countries, East Timor, Malawi, Cambodia, and Nepal, but we found that, fortunately, unfortunately, we share the same kind of scenario regarding the implementation or advancement of SDG 16. There are the few key challenges that we face in common. The first one is being the hardship, the difficulty in cascading down the efforts of the national level to the sub-national level, mainstreaming the SDG agenda into the provincial or the local level planning and budgeting. In case of Nepal, Nepal is federated just since the last 3 years back, so this is being the challenge, major challenge. The similar situation has been faced by Cambodia and other countries also in order to localize the SDG at the local level. It is more towards concentrated in the national level, and applying SDG at the sub-national level is being the key challenge here. The second challenge become making the existing data generation system more robust and database system in line with the SDG requirements is the second major challenge, and which demands a huge chunk of resources and capacities as well. Data collection is very relevant, but actually, as I said, that it is covered by national budget, and in sometimes the budget cuts down in relation with the sub-indicators. So that is the second major challenge. Other being the disaggregation of data. In terms of sex-wise, gender-wise, geographic area-wise, and other categories, which this is also a major challenge. Others being the strengthening of governance at local level, least representation of vulnerable groups in the administrative structure, and low level of accountability due to the political vacuum in some of our countries. Is the major challenges what we face. And to overcome these challenges, the governments of our table, all the 4 governments is striving very hard, basically adopting the strategy of a strong partnership among the 2 or 3 tiers of government, the local government, sub-national government, and the national government, in terms of resource mobilization, financing, and capacity building. Similarly, the governments are also, in fact, trying to align and disaggregate at the sub-national level by sex, group, age group, social groups, and disability, the targets and indicators of sectoral plans, long-term strategies, and perspective plans with the sustainable development goals. Similarly, national data collection and processing system the governments are trying to redesign to acquire the well-developed disaggregated data collection system. In the same manner, the NGOs are also the good partners in the development of the country, and rendering their service at the service of NGOs in transparent and accountable fashion become the challenge. To address this challenge, the governments are trying to capacitate the local leaders, social mobilizers, and civil society organizations and NGOs, and transparency in the activities of these organizations, and encourage people to participate in the periodic election process. So this is the scenario regarding the question 2. I thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's a sort of kind of another presentation. Okay, sorry. I give you just 2 minutes. Okay? As a last wrap-up presentation. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mustafa Ahmed. I'm from KDI School. We have like multinational on our table, so we will choose like 4 countries to check the question number 2. So we choose question number 2, and we will talk about the experience in Egypt. Egypt adopted like a new vision 2030. This vision related to SD goals. So we are like working towards these goals. So in goal number 16, we had like a new regulation for civil servant to make the efficiency of civil servant high, and to make like some modification, and to put a lot of decentralization from central to another local parties. About Albania, Albania had like experience in stop corruption, so they had like online platform to report about corruption issues. So it's like available for everyone all over the country. And they had like transparency online. Every data and every information are available online for every people. In Uzbekistan, they had like open platform for citizens to make complaints about everything related to the efficiency of public servants and many else. In Indonesia, they had like many experience about corruption, eradication of corruption, and the government transparency, and increasing the efficiency of civil servants. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your very active engagement. Okay, due to time limits, I have to close our discussions. Okay, the presentation by our two colleagues from DPIDG, Adriana, and UNESCAP, Katinka, provided us with some good information on cross-cutting role of public institutions and institutional arrangement and partnership building and capacity support available to member states, and most importantly, how to reach out and gain access to their capacity support. Three country presentations on preparing VNRs to 2018 and 2019 HLPF are very interesting and could shed good lights for other countries that may have plans to conduct VNRs in the future. Finally, I thank our presenters again for preparing high-quality presentations, and I also thank you all of your proactive engagement and discussions, and our rapporteur will report the outcomes from our interview sessions to the partnership building session. So please submit, fill out the flip chart and submit to the rapporteurs. I hope we all will keep showing this proactive engagement throughout this symposium, remaining days, which leads to making this symposium success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chong, for the wonderful moderation. I think we do appreciate the time together and the interactions we had, and it looks so wonderful. It's time for the coffee break, and kindly help me express our sincerest thanks to the moderator and also our speakers for their excellent job and being able to manage this section very well. I think the panelists and the speaker and the moderator have been so wonderful. I would like to take this opportunity to let us all give them a big round of applause. I think time is fast spent. It's time to have coffee break. Let's return here at 4:20 prompt. So kindly, let's have coffee and have more interactions, and let's come back to meet again. Thank you very much.